not sure that Social Security will be here for years to come, especially if you're younger. So I would encourage people to find other ways to make sure that they are taken care of in their old age, and to have Social Security be more of a supplement as opposed to depending on Social Security.
What do you say to young couples getting married, or even maybe people older couples as well? You know, is there a need for them to have a plan in place?
So legally, as a lawyer, I would tell people to get a prenup. I would tell them to protect your assets while you are alive, while you're getting married. That's what me as a lawyer, I would tell people to do. Me just as a person, I would tell you not to get married to someone that you feel as though you have to get a prenup with. But of course, to each their own. In the estate plan, it consists of having documents that will ensure that if you get sick while you're alive, someone can manage your assets. If you can't speak for yourself, you're telling the hospitals who should be in charge and who they can talk to. And it consists of you telling the world who should get your assets once you pass away.
Does that also include information like a bank account, your password, where important documents are, and things like that?
They need to know when the trash gets picked up. Everything should be included in your estate plan.
I'm embarrassed to admit that I don't have anything like that in place. I know so many people do not have it because I'm not planning to die. So why should I have it in place?
Exactly.
Right? Am I right?
You're right. But when you pass away and your child picks up your phone and they say, "Oh no, what's the password to Facebook?" Your Facebook account may be open for years to come because we didn't know the password.
You are welcome to the voyage. Today's conversation will dive deep into will and trust. And for me, this is very personal because I have seen families that will go and start raising money through GoFund in order to plan for the funerals of their loved ones. And it pains my heart that is this lack of knowledge. I have seen families torn apart because their loved ones did not leave an instruction on what to do with their asset. So today we are going to give clarity and educate people on what to do to prevent chaos after they die, even though we don't like to talk about dying. And so my guest today is Sephora, an estate attorney. You are welcome to the show.
Hi, DJ.
All right. Why is it that people don't like to talk about death or to plan for life? Well, not to plan for life after death because there is no longer life.
Right.
Well, there is a life.
Yes.
There is a different kind of life after death.
Yes.
But why is it that people don't plan for what happens to their assets or liability after they die?
I think a lot of people are afraid of dying. We still haven't overcome that, especially in the African community, right?
Okay.
Or we say that if you're planning for your death, that means you're inviting death, which is not the case. You're just organizing things for your family. That way, once you pass away, they already have a blueprint as to what should happen. Excuse me. I think there's also a stigma that says, well, when I pass away, the government will just figure it out. My family will figure it out. That's a lot of delay. It's a lot of stress. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of energy to make things more complicated for them. When if you plan now, we don't have to worry about who's going to do what when you pass.
You've seen families have their vulnerable state when their loved one die.
Yeah.
What does money do to siblings when a parent dies without a plan?
Money can bring out the worst in people.
Money can bring out the worst in people.
Yes. Or money can bring out what was already there. It just didn't have enough money to prove what was there to begin with.
Okay.
But especially with sibling relationships, right? When it comes to someone who thinks that they should have more of the family's estate. I took care of mom on her deathbed, so I should have more.
Yeah.
I'm the oldest, so I should have more. It really causes strain in people's relationships when they have an expectation that they should have more than maybe the others.
So, still talking about this mindset from your work experience across different culture, Well, maybe we'll talk about Africans in specifically right now. Is it because of religious understanding or the religious baggages that makes people not to plan for what happens to their assets after death, or just ignorance?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think there's the religious aspect that says, I don't want to invite death. My time will come eventually, but I need long life. We want to be like Methuselah and live forever, but even Methuselah died at some point, right? But then there's also the idea of, wait, I'm not going to be here. And that saddens a lot of people. They don't want to think about leaving their children. They don't want to think about going into a place, the unknown, right?
Okay.
As to what happens after that. So it's just something that scares a lot of people, but it's a necessary conversation.
So, is it true that if I don't create an estate plan, that the state already has a plan for me?
They have a plan for you, and it's not going to be the plan that you wanted to have, or at least not always. The state has their own ideas as to what should happen when you pass away if you don't tell them ahead of time.
And it is not always what I may not even desire or plan.
Right.
And they will execute it if I don't have a plan.
Absolutely.
The state will execute a plan for me.
If you don't have a plan. Yes.
That is scary.
Yes.
So from your experience, what is maybe an illusion that middle-class families have about estate planning?
I'd say an illusion is that the middle class think that, well, if you're poor, then, the government will take care of things for you. If you're rich, then you can, avoid taxes and keep things simple, but the middle class are somehow going to find their way through. No, it's usually the middle class that suffers the most when it comes to anything on the estate planning side, right? You may have had just, a simple house and a few assets, but because of lack of planning, those few assets are shrunk. They're getting even smaller just because you didn't plan. Or you may not have the extra assets to pay for an attorney later on. Maybe the rich can pay for the attorneys and they can pay for the long probate process. Maybe the poor can find their way out of that some way with some type of government assistance. But it's the middle class that usually ends up having to pay the most.
Interesting. In your experience, what fracture families more? The grief of death or the financial confusion that follows?
I'd say it's one after the other. First, it's the grief, and then while still grieving, they have that financial confusion as well. They don't know what to do or where to start or who to reach out to. Because
there was no plan.
There was no plan.
Have you seen a situation where siblings stop talking to each other after their parents dies? Mm-hmm. And what have you observed to be underneath that?
So that's why I said earlier, the things that were already inside of you, they just come out, they manifest because now there's money on the table.
Okay.
With relationships where siblings are no longer talking because somebody passed away, chances are there was already strain in that relationship. But the death of the parent is what made it come out all the more. And you see families where, these families are broken, especially when they don't have the parent there to be the glue. A lot of times the parent was the glue in these relationships with siblings, but now that parent is no longer there, they're not living in the same house. They have no reason to talk to each other anymore, and that strain will continue for sometimes generations to come.
So let's assume that I promise my son that, you will be the one that will have this house or this bank account. I give a verbal promise and then I die. Does that stand in the court of law, and is it enforceable?
Your son needs to prove it.
Well, I told him.
That's not enough.
Really?
That's not enough. We need something written down. And a lot of times, wills, other documents, they need to be notarized for that reason. That way you're not just saying it to your son, but somebody else is there to say, yes, I was a witness to the things that were said. Somebody else is there to say, yes, you were in your right mind when you told your son all of this information. Because you may have told him, but maybe when you told him, you already had dementia. You may not have realized what you were saying when you told him this. So we need to prove that not only did you tell him, but that you were in your right mind when you told him.
When is the right time to start planning for life or planning for what happens to your assets when you die? What is the right time to have an estate plan?
I think anyone over 18 needs to have an estate plan.
Please say that again.
I think anyone over 18 needs to have an estate plan.
Even if you don't have an asset?
If you have a bank account, you have an asset.
Really?
Yes.
Why is that important?
Who's going to get that bank account when you pass away? If you're over 18, right? Now we're leaving it up to the bank to decide who should be the one to get that
Even
account.
if there is no money in the account. So what is the point?
If there's no money in the account, of course, there's no one to get it. But if you want someone to be able to get your assets, if you have a car, for example, if you have a life insurance policy, you have to tell the world who should get your stuff at any age.
So anyone after 18 should have an estate plan in place.
Yes.
But if someone does not have an asset, a property, a bank account, but they still have a life, they are breathing, is it important to still have a document or a plan in place that determines who makes decisions for them when they are in a state where they cannot make decisions for themselves?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially, again, if you're over 18. If something happens to you, we think that it's only the older people that will have dementia and they'll pass away in hospice or somewhere. But you can be 18 and get into a car accident. You can be 18 and be in a coma. It happens to anyone at any age. So if that's ever the case, it's important to already have something set up to where you're telling the world who should be in charge of your assets, who can pay your bills for you, who can create your estate plan for you if you're in the hospital. So you need to tell the world, if something happens to me, this is the person that you can talk to on my behalf.
What if I have what if I don't trust anyone that can make those kind, because I've seen cases where people they are sick, right, but they still have faith that they will be healed. I mean, doctors have told them that there is no hope, that it's just a matter of time before they die, but they still have faith and they have no one that they trust that can make decisions for them.
Right.
What can such kind of a person do?
Continue to have faith. Okay? I'll have faith with you. But while we have our faith, let's get something written down. In fact, let's set up what I would call a financial power of attorney.
Okay.
That way you still have faith, but you're telling the world, if for whatever reason something does happen, here's the person that can make these decisions. And if you don't have anyone in mind, there are third parties that can stand on your behalf.
Oh, really?
You can have a bank. You can have an attorney. You can have third parties that aren't necessarily family members, but people that you trust and people that you pay to be in charge for you.
Interesting. So, is having life insurance the same as having an estate plan?
Absolutely not.
So, what is the difference?
Life insurance, you're telling the world, hey, when I pass away, this is the person that should get this money because I've been paying into this life insurance.
Okay.
Your estate plan says all the assets that I currently have at the time of my passing, this is how I'd like for it to be given out. So life insurance can be a part of your estate plan, but life insurance says when I pass away, give this money to this person. Your estate plan is broad and it encompasses all of your assets and says when I pass away, these are who should get my things.
In your experience, have you seen when, like I was asking earlier on, that what happens when someone becomes incapacitated without power of attorney? Yeah. Who really takes control and who makes decision for the person at that time?
The government is in control again.
Wow. Without a plan, the government is in control.
Yes.
And when you're on a sick bed and you cannot make decision for yourself.
Exactly. Because at that point, your family will need to go to guardianship court. And guardianship court is where you are now asking the courts for permission to be able to act on this person's behalf. And similar to probate, it takes time. You need an attorney. You have to prove why you need their money. You have to prove that you're a competent person to be able to sign and act on their behalf. It's a court process. Whereas if you just have that one document, that financial power of attorney, if something happens to that person, you are automatically able to speak on their behalf.
And this particular instances really grieve me whenever I see it. And that is when I see GoFundMe pages for funerals.
Yeah.
It grieves me that these are hardworking people and they die. And then their friends and family are now looking for money either to do their funerals either in the US or send their dead bodies back to wherever countries that they are from. Why is that, and how can we prevent that?
It grieves me as well. I think that the reason why so many GoFundMes pop up is because, when that person passed, there wasn't an expectation that they would pass away.
Yeah.
And so now family members who were not ready to now have to put forward thousands of dollars for a funeral or for extra expenses, they can't bring that all up at once, so they ask for help. Mm-hmm. Now, having something set up like a life insurance policy ensures that when you pass away, your family can use the money from that policy to pay for your funeral.
I'd say.
As opposed to now having to ask everyone else to come in and help, and you don't know how much you'll receive with a GoFundMe. And those type of organizations, they take their own piece of it as well. You don't get 100% of what you get from GoFundMe.
Yeah.
So having something like a life insurance policy, I encourage people to have it when you are someone who others depend on.
Okay.
In other words, if you are a father, if you have a home and you want other people to inherit that home when you pass away, having a life insurance policy is important. That way they can use the proceeds from that policy to continue to pay for the home or pay for your funeral or pay for whatever else without needing assistance from the GoFundMe or anyone else as well.
So one argument that I've heard from people is that, well, I'm just struggling to make ends meet right now. I don't have extra money for life insurance. What will you say to that kind of a person?
There are different kinds of life insurance. You can get a very small policy that's $20 every month. So instead of eating out, you're just paying $20 towards that life insurance policy. It's a necessity, right? And
it is a necessity to have life insurance.
Absolutely. It's a necessity. If you have people that are depending on you, it's a necessity to have life insurance.
So the question is, do you have life insurance? Many people don't.
Right.
That's something that needs to be corrected. Let's assume that there is someone out there watching this session now. Let's say the person is 40, they're married, with kids, with mortgage, and they have nothing in plan. They have no plan in place. Where should they start and why there?
Yeah, definitely start with the basics. At minimum, a will.
Okay.
Sit down with an estate planning attorney if you can. At minimum, a will, though. At minimum, a financial power of attorney. That way you're taking care of yourself while you're still alive and once you pass away.
Now, let's dive in. So, can you what is a will? What is the difference between a will and a trust?
A will is a document where you are telling the government who should get your stuff when you pass away.
Okay.
And so once you have that will executed, once it's been made properly and you actually pass away, that will is given to the probate courts. And the probate courts will follow whatever it is that you set in your will and give those things over to your loved ones. So at minimum, you need a will because you're at least telling the world who should get your stuff. Now, for those who want to avoid that probate process, and they're saying, once I pass, I don't want my family to have to go through the courts. I don't want them to have to wait. I don't want them to have to hire an attorney in the future. In opposition to a will, or instead of a will, they can get a trust instead.
Okay.
And I like to refer to a trust as a bucket. And it's a bucket that you control while you are alive. So instead of your assets going through the probate courts when you pass, because you put all of those assets into your trust, into your bucket while you are alive, those things avoid the probate process altogether.
Okay.
And so with trust, as you accumulate more assets, as you get more things in your lifetime, you can keep adding it onto your bucket. And then once you pass, everything that was in that bucket goes out to your beneficiaries however you wanted, without anybody else having to be involved.
Interesting. Earlier on, you mentioned a will that is properly executed.
Yeah.
Is there a will that is not properly executed?
Yes. In fact, when people try to make their own wills by themselves by hand,
Or they download a will online,
yes,
and then they fill it up.
not
Is
all
that
wills.
valid?
Sometimes. Not
Okay.
all wills are one and the same. Just because you have a will doesn't mean it's a good will.
Really?
The language of your will is the most important part of your will.
Wow.
And so you'll see people who will, maybe they even had a will created by an attorney and it has the right language, but it wasn't executed properly. In some states, you need to have 2 witnesses to sign the will. In some states, you need to have a notary. So when people try to do things on their own, make their own will, or maybe they have an online will, which they think is correct, but that will is specific to the state of Nevada, and it's not specific to the state that they're in, it can cause a lot of problems. So not all wills are one and the same. And if you do have a will, that doesn't mean that it was the right language. If you have a will and it's the right language, that doesn't mean that it was executed properly either.
So you mentioned that having a trust is like a bucket.
Yeah.
So are there different types of trust, and which ones should people have?
Yes, there are different types of trusts. There are trusts that you can create while you are still alive. There are trusts that you can create once you've passed away. And even within the trusts that you are making while you are still alive, there are trusts that you easily have access to, and there are trusts that are a bit more complicated as well. Not all trusts are the same.
Okay.
So trusts like a revocable living trust, which is a trust made while you're alive. Revocable means that you can make changes throughout the process, throughout your life. Those are great trusts to start out with.
Okay.
Irrevocable living trusts are another kind of trust that are great trusts, but they're not the trust that everyone needs. So depending on your situation, you may just need a revocable trust, or maybe you need an irrevocable trust. But those are things that when you sit down with an attorney, they'd be able to say, yes, in your case, an irrevocable makes sense, or in your case, you just need a revocable.
So basically, trust, it protects people's assets when they die. And also helps to determine what happens to those assets. Does it also save people money?
It can.
Okay.
It can, for example, with capital gains tax. When you sell your property, or when your family sells your property in the future, having your property in a trust means that they don't have to pay that high capital gains tax. They get what we call the step up in basis. So they get a reduced or maybe even 0% capital gains tax, as opposed to other ways of giving that property over to your loved ones.
So when someone is alive, is it advisable to put their property into trust or to have it in their name?
I would encourage people to put it into the trust, because when you put it into the trust, you're avoiding probate for that property now. You can take the property out of trust anytime. You can sell it. Okay. You can refinance, right? There are specific rules that we have to look into, but you have a lot of autonomy. You have a lot of freedom with your property. You're just putting it in the trust that you own, and you're the only one that can control your trust while you're alive.
Because tomorrow is not guaranteed to anyone. So even when you are still alive, it is better to put that property into a trust, which you can always, if it is a revocable trust, you can always take it out of trust if you choose to, right?
Exactly.
And so, but because tomorrow is not guaranteed to anyone, that in a way secures what happens to that property in case one dies.
Yes. And people think that, well, if I put my property in the trust, I'm losing my property. You're not.
Okay.
People think if I put the property in the trust, I'm going to lose my homestead exemptions. You're not.
Okay.
You're not. It can sound very scary, but like we mentioned, there are different kinds of trusts. Something like a revocable living trust made by someone who knows what they're doing, you're avoiding all of those fears.
So are there some misconceptions that people have about trust generally?
Yes, people think that trusts are public, which is
Okay.
not the case. Trusts are private. In fact, it's an opportunity for us to avoid government interference altogether. No one needs to know what you had in your trust,
Okay.
depending on the trust that you have. And I'll say another misconception is that when you're putting something in the trust, you're locking it in and that you can't take it out. Different kinds of trusts. With the revocable, you can buy a new house, put it in here today. A year later, you want to buy another one, you take it out without having to ever come back to the attorney or someone else. So I'd say that trusts can look very scary, but they're very simple. They're very simple, and it's an easy way to just make sure that once you pass, you don't have to worry about the assets that you're leaving to your family.
Can you compare the cost of setting up a proper estate plan versus the financial and emotional cost of probate?
Yes. An estate plan could be anywhere from, let's see, 1,000 to 6,000, depending on what you're trying to do.
Okay.
Maybe even a little bit higher than that if you're wanting to get very complex. But probate can cost anywhere from $7,000 to $12,000. Right? So if you set things up properly ahead of time, especially if you're younger, then you don't have to keep adding on to that expense later on. And when it comes to probate, if you're paying an attorney at an hourly rate, depending on how often they're having to work for you, depending on what they're doing for you, those numbers will only increase. If you create an estate plan once, you've set it up once. Whereas with probate, those are things that easily change. The factors change, the costs change, so you'll probably will end up having to pay more in the future.
So if I set up a trust, do I need to have an executor? And does that person need to be a family member?
Yeah, if you have a trust, you definitely want someone to be in charge.
Okay.
So that person would be similar to the executor. For trust, we would just call them a trustee.
Okay.
So that's who would be in charge. And does it have to be family? Not at all. It could be a third party. It could be a bank. It could be a law firm. It could be someone that you know that is trustworthy and an organization that you know will be here for a long period of time too.
Being an immigrant myself, I know many immigrants who are working 2-3 jobs. They are sweating to build assets, to acquire properties. What risks are unique to immigrants when it comes to not having or having an estate plan or trust? What have you seen?
I'd say, especially for immigrants, because I'm an immigrant myself, when you're here and nobody else is here, that's usually where we find those issues of no one else can come and get your stuff when you pass away.
People cannot come from Ghana, from Nigeria to come and get my stuff here.
Well, it depends on the immigration laws at that time too, and who it is that is coming. Hopefully they have a way to come into the U.S. to be able to get those things. And if that's not the case, then yes, sometimes we're leaving it to the government to get our stuff. I'll say that there's also the assumption that because I'm working so hard and I don't have as much, I don't need to have a plan.
That I've heard that too. That I don't have anything, so there's no need for me to have a plan.
Yeah, but what you do have, and no matter how small or how big it is, what you do have is worth protecting, and it's worth giving to the people that you want to get it and nobody else.
What cultural expectation or beliefs do you think makes people not to have an estate plan, or that actually conflict with the U.S. law?
I'd say that cultural belief is everything will go to my children, everything will go to my spouse, and that sometimes conflicts with U.S. law because, especially with blended families, that's where things can get very complicated.
What do you mean by blended families?
I mean, one spouse has a child or children that the other does not have biologically or adopted.
Okay.
So when we have those blended family situations, especially in African culture, right, they would say that maybe the men in that family should inherit everything. Even some Middle Eastern cultures too, only the men.
Really?
Or only the oldest should inherit and give to the rest, not the girls, definitely not the youngest. So I would, for my family's estate, I'd really struggle. But here in the U.S., the division is they're trying to make things as equal as possible. So they're going to automatically try to make sure that the blended children inherit first, or just make sure that nobody is left out. And that may not be what the person who passed away wanted. Because you know your family. You know who can be wise with the things that you give them. You know who will squander it in a day.
Yeah.
You know who has alcohol problems. And if you give them that money, they're just not going to manage it well. So you know your family while the rest of the world may not know them.
Let's assume someone dies here in the US and their family is in Nigeria. Can the families there put pressure or a demand on the spouse on what to do with the assets of the person that died?
They can put an emotional demand. They can tell you that, they're going to try to hurt you in one way or another. I don't know. But legally, no.
Legally, there is nothing that they can do.
Legally, the government here will try to make sure that spouse is taken care of. Spouse and kids, not third parties, not long distance family members, no.
Interesting. So, people out there that are thinking that they have loved ones here that they can take over their assets or their property. It doesn't work that way.
No.
Because I know, like you said, some cultures will say it is only the male child or the uncles that will have to take over the property. Right. That stays where you are. You can't carry that cultural expectation over to here in the US. Interesting. So, when somebody say that, I think I'm ready for retirement, what do you look for to test that assumption?
Yeah, well, I definitely want them to sit down with someone more on the financial side.
Okay. But
for those who are sitting down with me, if you still have a mortgage and you're looking to retire, are you going to have enough money? That's the biggest thing with retirement. A lot of people would love to retire, but the bills that they have don't match what they're going to get with Social Security. So as long as you have a good buffer to where you can take care of yourself and your needs and anything else, go ahead and retire.
I wish I can retire early.
Me too.
So is Social Security funds a strategy, or is it a safety net that many people are dangerously overestimating?
I think it's a safety net. I'm not sure that Social Security will be here for years to come, especially if you're younger. So I would encourage people to find other ways to make sure that they are taken care of in their old age, and to have Social Security be more of a supplement as opposed to depending on Social Security. And people don't realize, especially if you're an immigrant, for example, or someone that hasn't worked here in the U.S. for a long period of time, your Social Security may not be as big as you think it is. Right, it may be something that's $2,000 a month. $2,000. That's not a lot to live off of. So just having a good idea of how much you're actually going to get back, and make sure that you're supplementing yourself with other ways is the best way to have more peace of mind when you retire.
How connected are retirement planning and estate planning? Are they the same thing or they are different?
They're similar, but they work hand in hand. With retirement planning, things like your 401k, things like your IRA, you really want to know how those things work, especially for any asset that you have not paid taxes on yet.
Okay.
This is money that's going to come to you, but you're going to have to pay the taxes before it comes to you, right? So just having that in mind, it's a great supplement along with Social Security. But when you are retiring, you want to really make sure that you have a good financial plan. That way you're not having to go back to work later on after you've already retired.
Interesting. So, have you had instances where people will say, don't leave money for your children when you die? Or don't leave assets for your children when you die, that your own parent did not leave anything for you. Therefore, why do you want to leave anything for them? What do you say to that?
I say to each their own. I would love for my parents to leave me something. I won't complain. But I think it depends on the way you're wanting to raise your family. There are some clients that I have that will have that same theology, and they will not give to their children because they know that their children are already well off, and they'll give directly to their grandchildren. They'll have money set aside for their grandchildren's, college funds or whatnot. So it's up to you to decide. But as long as you're giving that money over to people that you know are going to be responsible, then by all means.
Interesting. If you have 60 seconds to speak directly to every parent listening right now, what will you say to them?
I would tell them that you need to think about who you want to raise your children if you were to pass away. You need to have something written out. That's something that you can have written out in a will. That way, they're not just going to pick, the courts aren't just going to pick the next person that's closest to you. In fact, the courts are going to pick what they think is in the best interest of your child. But you know your child, and you know your family, you know the people around you. So I would really encourage you to write out who you want to raise your children if something were to happen to you.
So what about young couples? Earlier on, you said anyone at the age of 18 should have an estate plan in place. I've seen cases where people do prenuptial agreement, right? What do you say to young couples getting married, or maybe people older couples as well? Is there a need for them to have a plan in place?
That's a tough question for me, DJ. It's a really tough question for me. Legally, as a lawyer, I would tell people to get a prenup. I would tell them to protect your assets while you are alive, while you're getting married. That's what me as a lawyer, I would tell people to do. Me just as a person, I would tell you not to get married to someone that you feel as though you have to get a prenup with. Okay. But, of course, to each their own. Interesting.
Well, so as we begin to wrap up our session together, when you sit down with your with people generally, what is one question that most people usually ask you?
One question that most people usually ask me is, when I pass away, what are my loved ones supposed to do? Because I may have a sit-down conversation with them where I'm telling them what's going to happen when they pass away, but I've probably never met their kids. Their kids may not know what to do once they pass. And so I think it's really important, if you are creating an estate plan, to have those conversations with your family members as well. That way they understand the steps that they will need to take when the time comes, and then they can focus on mourning your loss without focusing on having to figure out what to do and picking up the pieces as well.
In a high level overview, what does an estate plan consist of? What is inside that document?
Yeah. In the estate plan, it consists of having documents that will ensure that if you get sick while you're alive, someone can manage your assets.
Okay.
If you can't speak for yourself, you're telling the hospitals who should be in charge and who they can talk to.
Okay.
And it consists of you telling the world who should get your assets once you pass away.
Okay. Does that also include information like your bank account, your password, where important documents are, and things like that?
They need to know when the trash gets picked up. Everything should be included in your estate plan. In fact, you should try to create a binder where when you pass away, if they just take this binder, everything that they need to know is in one place.
Really?
When the trash gets picked up, your subscriptions, your passwords, that way they're not having to figure out what was the make and model of your first car because you didn't write any of your passwords down. Having everything in one place, that way they can just say, this is who my father was banking with, this is who my mom was working with. It just makes things easier for them.
I'm embarrassed to admit that I don't have anything like that in place. I know so many people do not have as well, because I'm not planning to die. So why should I have it in place?
Exactly.
Right? Am I right?
You're right. But when you pass away and your child picks up your phone and they say, oh no, what's the password to Facebook? Your Facebook account may be open for years to come because we didn't know the password.
So all of those things need to be documented.
Absolutely. It's all a part of your estate plan.
Wow. So I have jobs to do then.
Lots of work to do, DJ.
Interesting. So one last question that I really want to ask is that is it true or false statement that it's only the rich that should have an estate plan? True or false?
Easy one. False.
False. Why?
It's not just the rich. I think anyone, again, over 18 needs to have some kind of plan. That way you're telling the world who should get your stuff, who should get your debt, but also who should be able to make decisions on your behalf while you are alive, but you can't make them for yourself. So long as you're able to tell the world, hey, this is who I've selected. This is what I want my people to get. Write that down. It doesn't matter how much you have. You may have $10 to your name, but you want someone to get those $10, or do you want that $10 to go to the government, to go to taxes? Say who should get your stuff.
True or false? I'm not planning to die, so I do not need to have an estate plan.
False. I don't think anyone is planning to die.
Okay.
But you still need to have a plan in place. You may die tomorrow, you may die 100 years from now, and that plan may change. It may evolve. The good thing about creating an estate plan is as your life evolves, you can update the plan. But having something set up just gives you peace of mind when you actually do pass.
True or false? An estate plan is expensive.
Both. If I'm being honest. It can be very inexpensive, right? There are programs that are set up where, especially with different offices, different law firms, they're willing to give away, pro bono work, or able to give away free work. Or you can maybe look things up online with your city, your state. They may have free resources that are available to you. You don't have to get the most expensive plan. You just need something. So as long as you have something, you should be fine.
Which one is better, a will or a trust?
Trusts are better than wills, but not everyone needs a trust.
Really?
Really.
So who should not have a trust?
I'd say, for example, your 18-year-old, right, who doesn't have a property yet, he could have a will, that's fine. Or he could have a trust. That way, as he isn't receiving more in his life, as he's purchasing more in his life, he's funneling all those assets into the trust. You could be 80 years old and have a bunch of properties and have a lot of assets and still may not need a trust because you want to keep things simple and you want your family to still go through probate, just to have a simple probate. Not everyone, wants their family to avoid probate.
Really?
Some people don't have physical beneficiaries that they want to leave their stuff to. They may not be married. They may not have children. So the idea of probate doesn't really bother them. A will may not be a bad option if they want to give those assets to charities, for example, and the charities could wait. So it really just depends on your family situation and what your goals are. What are you trying to accomplish?
How often can one update or should one update their trust or their will?
I think one should update their trust or their will anytime there's a new life change. Maybe somebody passes away, maybe somebody new enters into their life, or if there are changes to the law, because laws affect wills and trusts too. So if there's a change to the law, you may need to update your documents. And if you win the lottery, or if you end up having a lot more than what you had at some point, you want to update things to reflect that too.
So what 3 important documents will you say anyone that is above 18 should have in place?
Financial power of attorney.
Financial power of attorney.
Will or trust.
Will or trust.
And a medical power of attorney.
A medical power of attorney.
Yes.
Those 3 documents, when you are over 18, if you don't have it, what will you say to them?
Good luck.
Good luck.
Yes.
That the government will do what? Will take over the decision of your life.
Yeah.
That is scary. So it is better to have those documents in place. I am ashamed to say again, I don't have either of those documents in place.
That's okay. We'll work on it, DJ.
We need to.
Yeah.
So if you also don't have any document like that in place, this is not to condemn you, but rather this is to educate and to inform you that you don't leave such decisions to chances. You don't procrastinate. Rather, you take a step. You consult an expert like Sephora, an estate attorney, to help you out. Her contact information will be below in this video and you can always reach out to her. Thank you so much. This has been educative and empowering. I really appreciate your time.
You're welcome, DJ. I had a great time. Thank you.
Awesome. On that note, keep the voyage going.